Now we said the database approach is our solution to get rid of the problems or disadvantages of traditional file processing systems. So let's talk about the database approach right now. Proper database design is very important because this is what's going to help us to meet the user's need. So we will use data models, which are graphical systems that are used to capture the nature and relationship among the data, which will consist of three main parts: entities, attributes, and relationships. So usually we refer to this as the ER diagram or ER model or entity relationship diagram or entity relationship model. Some people say ERD, which is the same as ER diagram. So let's look at the database advantages first. First of all, it's going to be program data independence. So what do we mean by that? We mean that we can change the program independently of the data. So we can do any sort of updates, any sort of program changes without having to change the structure of our data. Now we will have some redundancy, but this time it's going to be planned redundancy. Remember previously we had unplanned redundancy, which is a waste of storage. Now this time we'll have what we call planned redundancy, which is an advantage of the database because we can control the type and amount of redundancy, and we use that to improve the performance of our database. We will improve the data consistency because basically all of the systems are going to be pulling from the same database. We will improve data sharing again. We will pull from one source, and we will have increased productivity of application development because we will reduce the time and cost needed to develop the application by reducing the number of data storages that we need to design, because previously we will need to design a data storage for each part of the system. Now it's one data storage that is going to serve the whole system. We will also be able to enforce standards because we will again be pulling from one system, so we'll be able to enforce naming conventions, updating, and data protection. We will be able to improve data quality by specifying constraints. We will be able to improve data accessibility and responsiveness, and we will reduce program maintenance overall because changing either the data or the application does not necessitate changing the other part. So with anything that has advantages, there has to be some disadvantages. So there are some disadvantages to the database. One of them is the need of a specialized personnel. So somebody to manage the database. Usually we call this the database administrator, or you might heard of DB admin. So the DB admin is the database administrator. So we will need at least one DB admin, and this is one of the disadvantages of using a database. Another disadvantage is installation and management costs. So we may require hardware and or data communication system upgrade. We will probably have to upgrade our servers, or maybe just buy servers from uh, to begin with. We will have some conversion costs, so we will be paying some cost to convert from the old systems to the modern database technology. We will also need some backup and recovery to keep the data accurate at all times and to prevent data loss. And then we have what we call organizational conflict. So this refers to data definitions and data ownership. So who owns the data? Who has the rights to update and use the data? And the responsibility for accurate maintenance, who is responsible for maintaining the database. So these are some disadvantages of the database. But again, the advantages of the database in most cases overcome the disadvantages, so that's why we usually go with the database system. Now, let's talk about the database components. So the components of the database environment are what's shown in this figure. So we'll have the data modeling and the data design tools, which is going to be our ER diagram. A repository which is going to contain the metadata, DBMS, which is the application that we will use to manage our database. So DBMS refers to database management software or database management system. The database itself, the application programs that are going to contact or to interact with the database, user interfaces, which are what's going to allow the user to interact with the application programs, system database administrators, which is the DB admin we talked about, system developers, which is us in this case, and the end users, which are the users that are going to use those systems. Now let's talk about each one of those in a little bit more detail. So data modeling and design tools are automated tools that are used to design databases and application programs. So they will help us create data models, and they will also allow us to create the code for the database. Now, a repository is a centralized knowledge base for all data definitions, data relationships, screen and report formats, and other system components. And when we talk about data definition and data about the data, now this is metadata. So it's going to contain an extended set of metadata that is important for managing databases, and it will also contain other components of an information system, but the repository will not include the actual data. The actual data is going to be included in the database. So the main difference between a repository and a database, a repository contains the metadata while the database contains the actual data. We will also have the DBMS, which is the software system that is used to create, maintain, and provide controlled access to the user for the database. Um, some of the most popular ones are MySQL, which is the one we are going to be using in this course. We also have Microsoft Access, Oracle, SQLite, and there are some others on the market, but these are the most popular ones. The database itself, which is, as we said, the organized collection of logically related data. This is going to be designed to meet the user's needs of multiple users on the organization, and this is going to allow us to connect it to multiple systems, to have one design that is going to connect to the different parts of the organization, and this is going to get rid of one of the disadvantages of traditional file processing systems, which is having to design a separate system for each part. Again, note that the repository has the metadata while the database has the actual data. Application programs, which are computer-based application programs that are used to create and maintain the data and provide information to the user. So any program that is going to connect to the database, that is going to insert or change the data, this is one of the application programs that we mean in this case. The user interface, which is what the user is going to see, including languages, menus, other things that the user will interact with uh, from that system. The database administrators are the people who are responsible for managing the data resources in the organization, and usually referred to as DB admin or database administrator, DB administrator sometimes. Some people even say DBA, which is kind of vague a little bit, but this is refers to. System developers, which are the people who design the new application programs, which are us in this case, and the end users is an end user is anybody who is going to add, delete, or modify data in the database, and who will request or receive some data or information from it. So any person who is going to perform any of those tasks is considered an end user.